Hey guys, Edre here, and today I am finally going to be getting around to doing a review that I've been wanting to do for a while. I am going to be doing the new Future album, High Off Life. Going into this, I have a fairly decent background on how I feel about Future's music up to this point, and I feel like his projects have been hit or miss, but as an overall artist, I pretty much dig his style. DS2 from, I believe, 2015 still sticks out to me as being one of his strongest projects. I think not only is it really just track after track after track extremely strong, I think he really goes forward and expands on his style that I personally really like and really hits it the best here. But he's done some few collaborative projects which I like as well. Super Slimy with Young Thug is definitely one of those. I am pretty fond of Young Thug's music to begin with, so already I gotta say that project hit me because I just simply liked both artists. I liked both their styles, and I think they came together quite well. Another great example of that is The World on Drugs, collective thing that they did with Future and Juice World, two artists. So once again, I like their style quite a lot, especially Juice World. It was nice to hear them do that one. So going into this, I had an idea of what I was going to expect, but there were some surprises. But for the most part, he pretty much stayed true to the style, which I'm pretty sure most of us know. I mean, it's a very auto-tuned album. You know, it's his trademark. It's a very vibe-centric album. Like a lot of the songs kind of fall into the same territory, have this a very similar feel to it. That is what I mean when I'm talking about that. However, what isn't consistent throughout most of these songs is the fact that the actual quality between some of these songs is iffy. I think instrumentally, I think the instruments and the little stuff on top of the beats are actually the best part of this album. Well, the beats remain pretty simple throughout this entire project. Nothing too groundbreaking, nothing too crazy that really grabbed my attention as being purely unique. The little instrumental elements, the little guitars, the little strings, the little synths that get played over these beats, I actually find to be some of the most intriguing parts of this entire project. I have a few issues with this album in a general sense. I think that this kind of follows through, and I haven't really talked about this at all yet on my channel, but it follows through with the very supersized, very big, very large number of track type albums we've been getting over the past few years due to the rise of streaming. Now, well, personally, I don't mind that if it's done well. I mean, Beer Bongs and Bentleys by Post Malone was put together quite well. That has a decent amount of tracks. You know, So Much Fun by Young Thug has a decent amount of tracks. However, this album feels like they added a bunch of tracks after the fact, or like kind of like as filler, to kind of boost up the number of songs on here, which I personally don't approve of, and I think it really does shine bright if you could tell that some of these aren't up to par with the other tracks. Another thing that sticks out to me, which really kind of proves my point here, is the quality drop on the song Solitaries. Because that clearly was written really recently and talks about coronavirus, which I don't usually have an issue with, except for the fact that it is song you could hear it in his voice that the recording quality is a lot less polished than it is on the first few tracks, and then you come to this one and then you're like, wait a second, this sort of feels off, and that kind of got to me a little bit, and this kind of trend would appear on some of these tracks later on. Now, if there's any track that sticks out to me as being the best, I know it is kind of cliche to be picking the main single promoting this thing, but I would have to pick The Life is Good featuring Drake. That really was the main single pushing this project. Now, the reason why I think this one fits here the best is because it captures the essence of the album, I think, the strongest. I mean, it has the atmosphere, which I like. It has a very simple beat, and I think that overall the flow and the chord progression throughout this song really grabs my attention. I think Drake's style here is typical of his, but it just suits this song quite well, and I really, really, really do like his tone. And I really just think it's a mix of all the good elements I like about this album, and this song is arguably the one that I've come back to the most. However, overall, how I feel about this, I wasn't too crazy about his 2019 one, his 2019 project, that is. I do feel like this one is an improvement. That being said, I really don't think that it is like some masterpiece, and I really don't think it is his best album. I would still say, DS2 and some of his collaborative projects, I would argue, are much stronger, much more well put together than this one. So at the end of the day, despite the fact that I did get quite enjoyment from this, I really did like the instrumentals quite a bit, and I really did enjoy the atmosphere of this. A few things to me really did drag this project down, and I really think that Future could have gave a better performance. His performance throughout this album to me seemed a bit weak, a bit rushed in some spots, but overall, I've heard him give better performances on past projects, and I really think that he kind of was just doing his best to play to his strengths, without really showing off his talent much more than that. And that's why I have a hard time disliking this album. I actually quite enjoy this album. I have a hard time actually strongly hating it or anything, because he plays to his strength. He plays to the parts that I know he's good at. But unfortunately, because he doesn't go much further, because his performance is sort of weak compared to some of his other projects, I've settled on giving this a solid 5 out of 10. Now, for those who know anything about my videos, my reviews, or any of that, 5 out of 10 is a relatively solid review. What I mean by that is it's average. It's not great. It's not like I'm going to come back to this every week and just like find new elements. But I'm also not going to avoid this completely. I think a 5 out of 10 for me means it's an okay album. It's an average album. I don't love it. I don't hate it. How would you rate it? He really, in this album, seems like an artist with a lot of potential who's unfortunately lost in his excitement.